Evening from Chris Coles and the team. I hope all is okay, considering. I know it's been an emotional weekend given all that's happened, but this is our chance to talk about it, to process it, to get angry and upset about it, maybe to even get philosophical about it. Whatever you're feeling tonight, do get in touch and we'll speak to as many of you as we can on whatever topic. Administration news, the emotions of Saturday, the interview with Mel Morris, whatever it is, we're all ears. 0800 145 6161 free phone number, 81333 the text number, and if you are texting us, remember to put Derby at the front of your message, and you can tweet us at BBC Derby Sport. Plenty of you to speak to. Charlie Palmer is here as well, former Rams defender. Charlie, evening to you.
Good evening, Chris.
Could be one of those nights, actually, where we don't say a great deal. In fact, I'm hoping it is that kind of night because it's all about the fans. It was over the weekend. It will be tonight. But just a quick reflection on the weekend. How are you feeling now that it's been a couple of days since admin news? It's been a day since Saturday. I just wonder whether the enormity of what's happened is just beginning to sink in now.
To be fair, Chris, if hearing the news Friday night and it was a bombshell, I was shocked for the club to be placed in the administration and what that meant to Derby and to the supporters, to people who work for the club, and especially for Wayne and his players. I felt for Wayne and I felt for the supporters knowing that they've got crucial games Saturday afternoon and this bombshell has come out Friday night. And the club have not had the respect to sit down and talk to Wayne and his players prior to them making that decision, because that decision wasn't made Friday. They must have known about it midweek. But to state and to reflect on how Wayne dealt with the situation by putting that to one side and focusing on the game and ensuring that he prepared his players to perform to get the 3 points which were required. You've got to give him credit and you've got to give the players credit. However, after the game, we're all happy. We're all proud of where the players played. We're all happy with the supporters. They backed the players till the 95 minutes, right till the end, and got them over the white line. We still have this issue. Is it going to be 12 points? Is it going to be more? I'm a strong believer if it's 12 points, we still have a chance. But if it's any more, it's a tall challenge, it's a tall order. And I just feel sorry for Wayne supporters and those players because at this present time, we don't know how many points it's going to be.
Well, there are so many people to feel sorry for in this, Charlie, including the poor members of staff who some of them will be worrying intently about their future, and we don't really know what happens next. The administrators will be appointed at some point. As soon as that happens, minus 12 will kick in straight away. Will there be more punishments because of Derby's breaches of financial fair play? Quite possibly. How will the administrators go about looking to find a buyer? How will they go about getting the money back for the creditors, which, let's not forget, is the main purpose for administrators? They don't really worry about the long-term future of the club, sadly. They're legally required to get money back for the creditors, which is why it's such a difficult time, potentially. Obviously, we don't know what's around the corner. If you missed any of the weekend's programmes, by the way, where we did go into detail on Friday when it happened and a bit yesterday on Saturday, all the programmes available via BBC Sounds. Our emergency talking on Friday, Kieran Maguire was with us for most of it and did his best to explain what this means, what might happen next. And yesterday's pre- and post-match stuff where we spoke to many fans and obviously Wayne Rooney and Curtis Davis, all available via BBC Sounds. Let's get straight to it then, and we're kicking off tonight with Rob in Belper. Rob, good evening. The floor is yours. Fire away.
Good evening, lads. I was just saying, I really enjoyed the interview yesterday. I thought, Mel did make several interesting points. The EFL aren't innocent, but Mel is well and truly guilty. And I thought his lack of apology to the fans for putting us in administration was absolutely deafening. He has made financial decisions that have ruined this club. £46 million in wages on a £30 million turnover club. That isn't COVID. That isn't the EFL. That's you, Mel. You did that. You signed it off. Might not have been your idea, but you thought it was good and you went along with it. And you are the person that's put us in this mess. Has COVID helped? No. It hasn't helped anybody. Has the EFL helped? Not particularly. No. But they're all your decisions, Mel. And that's why the EFL are involved. And that's why you don't like them. Because of things you've done that they're trying to punish you for. And your lack of apology to the people that you've made redundant was deafening. That's more important than anything you could say to the fans. But your lack of apology to the fans was equally not there for putting us into administration. You apologise for not getting us promoted. That's not your fault. Things happen. We were unlucky. We came close. That's not your fault. But it is your fault that we're in this situation today. And it is absolutely unforgivable. And if anybody wanted to know anything about this man, you listen to Curtis Davis and you listen to Wayne Rooney. They both told you that they found out about this on Sky. He didn't have the decency to tell the players, OK, you can argue they're not going to be redundant. But what about the ticket office staff? What about the ground staff and all the other people? Did Mel ring them and tell them? Did he get them in a meeting and tell them? I suspect probably not, if he's not had the decency to tell the players. I think he's appalling. I don't know what you think.
So, well, you wanted to see more contrition, clearly, in the interview yesterday, and maybe even the statement. I think Mel was due to meet with the staff, maybe even today. But you're right, Rob, that half of me suspects that that's come, well, I say a little too late, that's come way too late.
Well, like I say, I expected an apology. He said in his statement, his statement blamed COVID. His statement blamed everybody else. The interview yesterday, he apologised, and I've listened to the interview, and he's apologised for not getting us promoted. He's apologised for what he called the mistakes that he made. He hasn't apologised for gambling this club's future on getting us promoted to the Premier League. Our fans didn't ask for that. Did we enjoy Frank Lampard? Yeah, we loved the football he played. Did we enjoy, under Steve McLaren the first time? Yeah. Did we enjoy seeing, the players on big wages? Of course we did. We enjoyed that. But we did not ask as a fan base to have our future gambled on getting to the Premier League. And I think that's unforgivable.
What do you think Mel Morris's legacy will be when this weekend is talked about, as perhaps 1983 is talked about now? What do you think will be the first thing that people think of?
In a strange way, I think that depends a lot on what happens next. If we would do what Leicester did when they went into administration and bounce back in that way, I suspect it might not be talked about at all. Or as graver terms, if we do what Berry did, then, I think he will be quite possibly the most hated man in Derby.
Rob, we have lots of people to talk to, but it's a great way to kick off. I just want to end by mentioning Saturday. What did you make of Saturday's events? The atmosphere, the performance and the result?
Quite frankly, why those players even bothered is absolutely beyond me. And the manager and the fans and everybody should be so proud of what happened on Saturday. I was on the verge of tears at the end of the match with absolute pride. I was on the verge of tears on Friday with anger, frustration and disappointment. And if any of those managers, players, fans, friendlies, whatever are listening, we're so proud of you and this isn't about you. And I think everybody showed that on Saturday. And we sold out the first allocation for Sheffield United at £37 a ticket, by the way.
Yeah, incredible.
We've sold out that first allocation.
I hear the second allocation is very close to going as well, Rob. So there's going to be nigh on 2,000 fans there, which is remarkable. £37 a ticket, remarkable.
I completely agree. And if you needed to know anything about our club, that probably tells you more than anything you could say.
Rob, fantastic call. Great way to kick off the programme. Thank you very much for getting in touch. And, let's hope for brighter times ahead.
Yes, you too. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. 0800 145 6161. Free phone number. Going to Daryl next. Let's kick off the messages front, though, with Chris, who says, I've reflected on Mel's interview yesterday, and after giving him some benefit of the doubt on his EFL explanations and trying to compete with parachute clubs, I've done a U-turn today. He has gambled and now he has walked away, threatening this club's existence by choice, not running out of money. He then has the audacity to say this is the best course of action. He's an absolute disgrace of the highest order, angry beyond words and fearful for our future. Dolan28 on Twitter, listening again to Mel Morris's interview, the more frustrating it is trying to stomach his words. The lack of care and no apology is sickening, or his apology is sickening. The heartbeat of Derby are the fans. We will always keep Derby alive. And Derek says, with all the off-field shambles going on at the club, what a top performance that was on Saturday. The scoreline didn't reflect how good we were. We showed real character and really good game management to see the match out. We seem to have come together now, the fans, the players and all the coaching staff, to get this great club heading back in the right direction. Come on, you Rams. Daryl is next up. Daryl, evening to you.
Evening, lads. You all right?
Yeah, we're okay, thank you. What do you want to say?
Basically, you don't get to have 500 million in the bank if you're not very smart. And if you take on what he said yesterday, first of all, he didn't actually say sorry until Ed pushed him to say sorry. That's the first thing. Second thing is, Kieran said earlier on today that there was an EFL charge by HMNC in 2020, 4 days after he sold the ground to himself. For me, listening to what he's got to say, and yes, the EFL are very, to hand to play with this. But this, for me, this is a game of chess that's been thought out very, very well. Because, if you've got creditors and you owe them money, and he said about, I put 200 million in, and, the ground, he kind of added it in that the ground's not actually in administration. You're still going to walk away with that ground and the money. And if you've got that sort of money, money breeds money. You don't want to lose that sort of money, yeah. But if you look back and you had like a timeline, you could actually see that this has been planned out really well. And the worst case action would be administration. I'm not really surprised with administration because it's really the only way out. And it has worked. The saving graces, I suppose it has worked. Man City, Southampton, Wolves, Leicester. The list goes on. I googled it earlier on. Luton Town got docked 30 points.
Yeah.
And it took them 7.5 years to get back. Don't fancy that, do you?
Well, no. I mean, clearly, you look at the teams that have entered administration, and sadly, this probably says more about football governance than anything else. It's a very long list, and it's a very long list of big clubs. Leicester, as you say, Leeds United, Crystal Palace, Brighton. There are lots. For every success story, though, there's obviously the horror story as well. When you look down, all right, they are, with the greatest of respect, the smaller side, Macclesfield and Bury, clearly the two that spring to mind. It sounds like then, Daryl, you're very much, and clearly this is the hope, that this. It might be painful for however many days, weeks, months, years, but this could be the moment you look back and think, or look forward and say, this is the moment that it started again for Derby and we were able to rebuild.
Well, someone said that Brian Clough would be turning in his grave, and I don't think Lionel Pickering would be turning in his grave because he's the one that helped us out of Robert Maxwell era. And it seems to be like, my point was, it seems to be a very well thought out plan to save himself money in the long run. And if he rented that ground out and it was in his family name forever, he'd get his money back tenfold. And that's another issue as well. And then obviously if you go digging and someone does proper, investigation on it and they find out that they've fit and proper purpose, whatever it is called, you could actually theoretically see a timeline of all the events. And as I said, you don't get to have 500 million if you're not very shrewd.
Well, and he said in his interview with Ed that he's clearly made mistakes and there are lots of things that he has done incorrectly. But it's a question of whether you think, okay, fine, you've gambled and you've lost and we have to accept the consequences, or whether you believe. It's interesting that it seemed to happen when Gary Rowett left for Stoke. The noises coming out the club towards Gary, and reason why I think Gary Rowett left partly was because he felt he wouldn't have the funds to strengthen. So and then Frank Lampard arrived.
Lampard glossed over it.
Well,
Frank
quite.
Lampard glossed over it.
So
I've said it many a times. Gary Rowett got called a snake, and at the time, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. But if you look back at it now, does everyone think that Gary Rowett deserves an apology? Maybe the way he did it, you don't know. But he could see things, and I've said it before when I've rung up before, he could see things. And it seems to be now that the guy was right.
Well, and you wonder and you wonder if Mel looks back at that moment and thinks, yeah, maybe we should have been much better at that, because you look at the money spent and none of the players, I don't think any player remains from that Frank Lampard splurge, and we're talking what, 3 summers ago. Yeah. Darryl, before I move it on, were you there on Saturday? And what were your opinions on Saturday? And what do you think will happen? Will the fans continue to be right behind this Derby team, do you feel?
I wasn't there on Saturday, I was at a wedding. But, yes, because Derby, once you're Derby, you're always Derby, aren't you? And they were there at the time. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when, obviously, the Robert Maxwell era and the revolt about all that. Even Graham Richards not being allowed to be in the ground, at the baseball ground, to have commentary on because it upset people. And it will come around and we will back them. I mean, it just says there, 2,000 fans at £37 a ticket. That says it all, doesn't it?
It really does, yeah, it absolutely does, and fair play to those fans. That is a lot of money in this day and age, and so many of you making that journey. Darryl, great stuff. Thank you very much for getting in touch. Enjoy the rest of your evening. 0800 145 6161 is the free phone number, 81333 the text number, Derby at the front of your message, and at BBC Derby Sport. Charlie, just very quickly, phenomenal support from the Derby fans there. I dare say that they'd have taken a good number of fans anyway, but based on what has happened, you get the impression that now so many supporters are willing to show just what this club means to them by spending, I mean, it's another programme in itself, but £37 is outrageous in the Championship, and the fact that they are willing to overlook that and go, and as I say, 1,500 went like that, they've put on another, I think, 500 or so, they're close to going, speaks volumes for how fans are feeling at the moment.
First things first, the supporters are disappointed. However, because they're true supporters and they will all support their club, Derby County, this is a footballing town and they'll support Derby through bad and good. Now, regarding to Sheffield United, because the players have given that performance Saturday and the style they actually played, the passion and desire, and some of the good football they played going forward, that's what Derby supporters want to see. And as whilst Derby supporters and while Wayne is insisting that there is hope that if it's 12 points, we've still got a chance of probably achieving, succeeding this tall order, overcoming the relegation, which many people have us down for Derby to be relegated. But as long as they keep on playing away and displaying those performances, we've got a chance, and Derby supporters would always support their team.
They certainly will, and it's being proven very much so. Nathan is next up. Hello, Nathan.
How evening, chaps?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good evening.
What's on your mind?
Evening. I'm obviously reading this hatred of Mel at the moment after, what he did. It's a difficult one because of where we've ended up, isn't it? It's ended up badly, but you've got to look at what people's intent are, and he never intended for this to happen. And I want to stick up for Mel and say, look, thanks for what you did. I know it's gone wrong. I've lost a business. I used to have a business in Sandlergate very quickly on this. 10 years, great times. I never saw the crash coming. Ended up losing everything. So, and I've been in exile from Derby ever since. That's a personal thing. So I know how this feels when you let people go, stuff his name. So I know how he's feeling. I thought he was quite contrite in that interview yesterday. I thought he was contrite. I thought, what he said stuck up to me. And I thought, fair play. He did what he did. 200 million quid. That's an awful lot of money. He's tried his best and it's failed. Okay, that's life. Let's just leave the guy alone. If Mel wants to go and watch Derby, my nickname in Derby when I was there, when I played at the rugby club, was Silverback. I'm quite happy to walk in arm in arm with him. That's how I feel about it. Leave the guy alone. He's a fan. Let him support Derby as well. I'm quite happy. If Mel listens to this, I'll go with you, mate. That's what I would say. What happened with Wayne Rooney finding out in Curtis, that's really bad. That shouldn't happen like that. I don't think that was planned. That's just the way it happened. That's my honest opinion of it. You know, I know I'm going to get pillaged for that, but that's the way I feel. You know,
well, Nathan, all opinions are welcome. Your line isn't great, but we'll persevere with it for now.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you're quite happy with what happened in terms of Mel Morris going the way he went about it, because it's fair to say that he wasn't to be financially responsible and get success in football doesn't seem to go arm in arm. And I know he pointed at the clubs that have gone up and have taken gambles, and there's a whole load list of them: Bournemouth, Villa, QPR, whatever.
Yeah.
But that's a massive, massive gamble that has royally backfired and affected.
It's sport, isn't it? It is a gamble. Of course, life's a gamble. Business is a gamble. A lot of time we don't know what the outcome's going to be. You know, the fact is he went with it. You know, and he went with his heart rather than his head. Absolutely, he admitted all that. You know, he said that. You know, it's one of these. It's happened. You know.
But when it materially affects so many people, not just the fans, but the people that work at the football club.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I know that. I understand that. And my heart goes out to all of them. But I know Mel. You've got to look at intent. What was his intent? Now, it could have done things better. He said that. You know, he said he could do things better. I said a few weeks ago I was on here and I said, look, I think we're going to either get bought out or go into administration. And someone said, I think it was just Ed, wasn't it, who said Mel will never let it happen. But I think he's just run out of money. I really do. I think I did say it at the time. We don't know what his bank balance was. You know, he's not going to leave himself destitute, is he? He's got to draw a line somewhere. I think what my biggest concern is that Mel touched on it, is that the people coming into the club, I think there was a deal that's fallen through even as late as literally Thursday, Friday last week. And if a deal's fallen through, these people are not stupid. They've realised that if it goes into administration, they might get a better deal. You know, I don't know. I'm just surmising.
Well, that's what Mel said to Ed. Exactly that, Nathan. He said, "Look, my biggest mistake was admitting I'd let it go for nothing, and therefore it would be far more attractive to buyers if they were to get it for nothing, and it left no wriggle room for negotiations." Nathan, appreciate your call. I say this every week. All opinions are welcome. You can disagree with them. That's absolutely fine. You can agree with them, and we can discuss it. But Nathan, thank you very much indeed. 0800 145 6161. Who is next up? Nigel is next up. Nigel, good evening.
Evening, Chris. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. It doesn't surprise me there are still people with views that are positive on Mel Morris out there, but they do seem to have dwindled significantly in numbers over the last few days.
I think that's fair to say, based on what has happened on Friday, yes.
What I wanted to come on and just give a little bit of a plug, if I can do, is for a group of us who, part of the reason we recognise those dwindling numbers, a group of us who, in recent weeks, had got behind the letter that Rams Trust sent to the club, asking for questions that were not only never answered, but were never even acknowledged by the club, which we felt was downright rude, but really highlighted a lack of transparency and communication that, frankly, the club has been running for a number of years now. If you look at the lack of filing accounts, and to come back to the point you were debating with the previous caller there, how are we as fans supposed to have any sort of idea of what's going on at the club if we can't even look at accounts for the last year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? We just have to trust that the people that are looking after our asset at the moment, and I always say that because the owner of a club only owns it on behalf of the supporting community until they pass it on to the next owners. Hopefully we don't get to the point where we get to liquidation, but let's assume that's the case for now. And so, a group of us were trying to get this point across on Twitter to people, explaining it in reasoned ways, having positive arguments about it. And then the news hit on Friday. And so we quickly sort of rushed together. It felt like there was a lot of fans out there who wanted somewhere to gravitate to, weren't really sure where to go, what questions to ask. We launched Black and White together on Twitter on Saturday morning, and by kick-off on Saturday afternoon, we had 1,500 people following us. We now have more than 2,000 following us. And all really we want to do is just ensure that from this point forward, that the club never gets to a point again where there is such a lack of transparency and communication between the club and the fans. Whoever is coming in to take over the club, we want to encourage that. But to do that, we all need to come together as fans. And we respect that people out there have different opinions, that the different groups out there, of which there are some excellent fan groups representing Derby County out there, all having slightly different objectives. We just want everybody to pull together. And that's people who are within those groups, people who don't feel that any one of those groups represents them, and come together, add to that 2,000 fans that we've got following us, and give some clout to the fans and the voice that we might have. It was really heartwarming on Saturday to see fans of Villa, Portsmouth, Birmingham, even Forest fans joining us and saying, we wish you all the best on this. This goes beyond rivalries, both inside and outside the club. And I'm sure, you guys in the club have been frustrated at the lack of communication as we have. And I'm quite interested that the one person's name who wasn't mentioned in the whole hour of Mel Morris's interview and hasn't popped up at all is the chief executive of the club, Stephen Pearce. I mean, he has essentially become Derby's equivalent of Iraq's comical Ali, in that if you look back at some of the statements and promises that he made as to what was going to happen in the next 48 hours at various points in the last 2 years, they just now look preposterous. And unfortunately, he's been left looking very silly if you read through those things.
Yeah,
I will say now there might be a number of questions that you're going to ask me about what do we propose to do. I'll be honest and say we're a group of 14 voluntary people. We're actually having a first meeting get-together tomorrow to try and work out a few more steps of where we go from here, and hopefully that'll answer a few more questions. But that's where we are for now. Sorry, Chris, you were going to come in there.
No. I was just about to say on Stephen Pearce. I think he probably didn't know either. I sincerely think that he was trying to find as much information as he possibly could. He was telling us stuff that he was being told in good faith, and clearly it was wrong. And yet another one. We'll see what happens as we move forward. You took the words out of my mouth, actually, Nigel, about how this manifests itself now, because we know. There is this 28, when the administrators are appointed, there's a 28-day period now where Supporters Trust can put together something toward the club. But there is talk of this being waived to try and speed up a deal. But it's worth mentioning again, as I said right at the start, the administrators' main priority is to get money back for the creditors and money back for the people that are owed money. That is legally their responsibility. So if they were to waiver this, it's not for the long-term benefit of the club. It's for the long term, or it's for the benefit of the creditors. So how do you go about this next step, Nigel? It's tough because, as you mentioned, there are lots of different organisations or supporter groups that are floating around here, there and everywhere. Some of them service slightly different needs. It must be quite a challenge now to get everyone moving forward in the same direction.
It is, look, and we started with 14 people, and we've still got 14 people, but some have stepped back because they've already realised the commitment that this is going to require, and others have come on board willing to make that commitment. And as I say, we'll have a meeting tomorrow and work out how we can try and push this forward. But I think, if you see the numbers coming out now, and Kieran Maguire has referred to this and other people have referred to this, if you look at the numbers that are owed reportedly to HMRC, to secured creditors, to what has to be done to the various groups within that, the number that you're looking to raise here that needs to go into the club, or certainly needs to be promised to go into the club, is around £60 million. That's nearly 10 times as much as the total creditors that Wigan owed when they went into this situation. So that gives you an idea of the quantum that we're dealing with here. And I'd be amazed, I'd be hugely relieved, but I'd be amazed if any of the fan groups out there representing Derby County have access to anything like that size of funds, or also, being absolutely fair to anybody, the wherewithal to run a professional sports club the size of Derby County. Therefore, we believe, as who we are, that the best thing to do would be that all fans groups say, do you know what, let's waive that 28 days and allow what we believe to be more than one consortium who are interested. Mel referred to more than one there. Let those groups come forward and, accelerate the process. We're a little bit fortunate these days when it comes to administration that the players can't be sold until January.
Yeah.
If that 28-day period waiving means that a deal can be done to get new owners in before January, we can perhaps save the fire sale of whatever saleable player assets we still have, and hopefully, that can help move the club forwards into trying to beat whatever points deduction we might have. But one thing I just want to also say, and I know you've mentioned it and other callers have mentioned it today, this is about the players, and I think everybody absolutely respects and thanks Wayne Rooney and the players for what they did on Saturday. And the atmosphere that every fan in the ground, and I think also the spirit of every fan that couldn't be there, summoned up for Derby County on Saturday. But let none of us forget the unnamed people who work behind the scenes at the club and make the club happen day to day, game to game, week to week, season to season, many of whom have been there years upon years and given great service to the club. And one of our members actually set up on Saturday a Just Giving page to raise funds for those employees at the club who may suffer hardship as a result of this. If anybody out there feels they have any money that they would like to help such people, as and when we get to that point, then if you check out our Twitter page, which is Black and White Together is the name of the organisation. The Twitter handle is @DCFCBWT. That's Black and White Together. You will find a link to that Just Giving page. I know Don Amott has already given, so thank you to Don for that. I know a number of other fans have already given, but it'd be great to build that money up and hopefully look after those people that Wayne Rooney mentioned in his interview for the game on Monday that often get forgotten in this situation.
Always sadly get forgotten, Nigel. It just the way football works. It's the guys and girls in the ticket office, in the communications department, in the commercial department, in marketing, in catering. It's brutally unfair because they could do their job brilliantly and still be out of one in the coming weeks, which is devastating. But it's great to hear so many people coming together, and often in times of crisis, especially in sport, you do get this effect, don't you? And it's just a shame that it always has to happen when something of this magnitude happens. Nigel, great to chat. I'm no doubt we'll speak again soon. But Black and White Together, do check them out on Twitter, and it's good to see that is growing and growing and growing. And hopefully a resolution. And I just wonder, Nigel, as well, that maybe this could be a big moment just for football, full stop, because there's lots of dissenting voices now toward the government about football finance. With Nigel Huddleston, the sports minister, newly sport minister, has come out to say, look, this does need looking at. Tracy Crouch, his predecessor, very much pushed this. And when high-profile people like Gary Neville are very, very much behind it, we could be looking at a very different financial picture in the next 4 or 5 years. Nigel, great stuff, and we'll speak soon.
Thanks, Chris.
Nigel, thank you very much indeed. 0800 145 6161. A few of your messages and then we're going to Suckbeer. Kieran says, first of all, what a performance and result on Saturday. Atmosphere, fans and everything unbelievable. Sadly, this was put on the back burner due to the gutting news on Friday. After reflecting on the interview, it angers me. Hiding behind COVID and the lack of apology is disgusting. As a former employee of the club, I know more than most what this club means to the people and staff members surrounding Derby County, and my heart goes out to them more than anyone. Yes, certain things didn't help Mel, but he made this bed and now he has to lie in it and take the consequences. Deep says the huge fan base will help protect us from dire consequences. The fact the stadium is excluded from administration will, I hope, allow Mel to have some control and leverage over prospective buyers. It may end up being a smart move for the good of the club. And Steve says, great interview yesterday, but although Mel said he'd made mistakes, he never explained what they were, but was quite eager to go into detail on things that seemed to be other people's fault. Was there on Saturday and all the emotions were evident, sombre to start with, but a build-up of tears, unity and pride as the day wore on. We are Derby and we will fight this despicable situation. The performance on Saturday was brilliant and we ain't relegated yet. And Andy says, good interview by Ed and great caller so far. One thing, though, I wish we could have known how long he could keep Derby's head above water financially. This is Mel. He intimated 2 to 3 months, but reports of his personal fortune seem to contradict that hugely. He took on the club with all the potential glory and accolades. Now it's gone wrong. He has a responsibility to give everything to keep us alive, and that means paying up until he finds a buyer or files for bankruptcy. Amazing atmosphere on Saturday, very emotional at the end. Andy, thank you. And Suckbeer is in Tutbury. Hi, Suckbeer.
Hi, guys. Hi, yeah. Just a couple of messages you just read out there. Where did Mel go wrong? Mel went wrong in 2014. We had a wage bill of 14 million. I've got a finance background, and he rose that wage bill in 2014 to 21 million the year after, 32 million the year after. And by 2018, the wage bill at Derby had risen to over 40 million. He tripled the wage bill in 3 years. That's facts. That's in the accounts. And when you've got a turnover of 30 million, not profit, 30 million turnover, he borrowed and saddled debt onto the club to an unsubstantial amount that was never going to be serviced. He panicked in 2019 because he knew with a wage bill of over 40 million a year, the club was already losing £2 to £3 million a month. That's the facts. So this thing about COVID and we're losing 1 to 2 million, it's a smokescreen. He's trying to baffle people with numbers. The facts are he borrowed too much money between 2014 to 2018. And all those long contracts and those debts built up on the club. I'm not sure where this £200 million numbers coming from. He's putting, you can see he's borrowed money on the ground. He owes HMRC 25 to 30 million. There's 60 million owed to creditors. Not to Mel Morris, but to creditors. So when other clubs have actually gone under, the owners turned round, and like the Forest owner a few years ago, and said, I'll write off my debts, and any prospective buyer can come and issue the credit in your invoices. So it's a great thing to happen. But Mel Morris hasn't written off any debts. He's basically walking away with a £60 million debt owed on Derby County. People need to wake up to that, because the question I will be asking Mel is, not COVID's been bad for everyone, but it wasn't around between 2014 and 2019. That was when he borrowed and borrowed and borrowed. We didn't tell him to buy these players. He sat there with his finance manager, and it's almost like having a credit card. You borrow on the credit card, and then you walk away from it, which is not secured on you. That's what he's done. And basically, he's risked our club with his foresight or his kind of brain, and he's got it all wrong. And he can't walk away from that. He has walked away from it, but he shouldn't walk away from it. Because there's lots of people who've lost their jobs. The club is bigger than Mel. He should have stayed there and serviced that debt. I'm sorry, he's got us into a mess.
Suckbeer, what would you say then to someone like Nathan, for instance, who was on with us 15 minutes ago? I don't know whether you heard the call. Who said, "I don't."
I did hear it. I was absolutely amazed. I can't believe there's still people in Derby that think Mel Morris has done a good job. We got to the playoff final with a salary for the whole club at 14 million. We had Andre Wisdom, Patrick Bamford on loans. We could have added a couple of loan players to that squad. He increased the wage bill by 7 million the year after to 21 million. The problem was the year after that, he went from 21 million, it's in the accounts, to 32 million and then to 40. We shouldn't be signing players like Bidra for 10 million and Belet for 10 million. How can we sign players for 10 million a player when our turnover income is only 30 for the whole season?
Stay there, Suckbeer. Charlie, do you have sympathy for Mel? Do you have any empathy towards Mel?
I'm totally in agreement with what Andy's saying. Derby are in Championship, and to be fair, we know what the gamble was to get into Premiership, but you can't overspend. And he, like Andy said, we talk about COVID, he's put all his excuses, but he has paid out too much money on players, and when they've not succeeded, they've not come off, he's had to pay them off. Where's all that money gone? We've got to recognise we're in the Championships. We want to obviously compete and try and get in the Premiership, but we can't overspend like we have done. And we can turn around and he can say COVID this, COVID that, but the problems stem prior to COVID, the amount of money, 100%. The gambled.
Suckbeer, what happens next then? We can talk about...
Look, if you look at what he's actually trying to do, he's trying to get into the Premier League, I think, to sell the club. And to sell the club for 100 or 200 million pounds. When he realised we weren't going to get in the Premier League, he's brought in Frank Lampard and Wayne Rooney. Those names in the Middle East and Asian countries are big names. He wanted to try and get a big name into the club, which made it attractive to overseas investors to buy. Fact. That failed. Now he's walking away. So the problem is now, somebody's got to come along and pay off those creditors. Who's going to come into the club and pay £60 million for debt off? What are they getting for that debt? They're getting a club which doesn't own the ground. The ground's owned by Mel Morris. Now, Mel Morris owns the ground. We own the training facilities. The problem is that, I think somebody mentioned Wigan Athletic earlier on. Wigan Athletic had 2 training grounds. They sold one. And they're using the other one. We haven't got 2 training grounds. We've got one.
They also went into administration in the height of summer, so had a transfer window to sell players, which is another conundrum for the administrators coming in now, because the transfer window has just closed. Final point, if you could, Suckbeer. I've got so many callers to get to.
Yeah, I think people are delusional to think that Mel Morris didn't know what was going on. He knew exactly what was going on. He tried to get a deal through in 2019 when he realised the debt was building up. A £45 million a year was going out, and only £30 million a year was coming in. He wanted out then. When that fell through, he panicked. Since. And actually, where we really need to look at is not during COVID, it's between 2014 and 19, when he saddled the club with debt and put the stadium in debt as well. And it all stems from that, not the last 2 years. The last 2 years have been bad, but nothing like the 5 years previous to that. He basically gambled with our club and lost.
Suckbeer, thank you very much for your call and for putting across your thoughts so well and in a manner I think that we can all understand. I know that sometimes with finances it can get a bit complicated, but I think we can all appreciate your sentiment. Suckbeer in Tutbury, thank you very much. Let's quickly move it on to Roger, who's next up. Hi, Roger.
Oh, hi. Speaking to you from France, where it's blinking freezing.
Oh.
And I just wanted to ring and sort of say how blinking devastated I was that hearing about administration on Friday night. Only what I wanted to say was, the history about Mel Morris is just that, it's history. It doesn't do any good blaming him or anybody else for the mess that we're in at the moment. What matters now is the way forward. And I just wonder, the question really is if the club was, was sold and Mel Morris chucked Pride Park in, because when all's said and done, what is Pride Park without Derby County? It's nothing. It's an empty shell. And if he chucks Pride Park into the equation, if we were sold, before the 28 days, does that avoid administration and the 12-point deduction? That was one thing I wondered about.
Well, I mean, I think we've gone past the point of that. I'm not sure why that hasn't happened already. Why would you? Why? I know that the Friday's announcement was an intention to go into administration rather than an administration announcement. But certainly from the interview that Mel gave Ed, I suspect that wouldn't be the case, Roger.
You don't think he'd chuck it into the melting pot?
Oh well, he'll certainly. I mean, clearly, as he said there, he'll clearly. He'll clearly try and assist whoever is coming in next. And I know there are concerns because there are football clubs that don't. Coventry is a perfect example. I mean, they went through a torrid time with Sisu, who didn't, who the club didn't own the Ricoh Arena. That's why they had to play at Northampton and Birmingham, and they sold it to Wasp. Do I see that happening? No, I don't. I really don't. Okay. But the stadium still obviously has a big part to play because, by all accounts, it's not the company that it is owned by, Gellor Law, is not in administration. But anyway, the financial complexities that have been spun over the years are mind-boggling, and it's probably part of the reason why anyone coming in to buy the club has to look through it and go, what exactly am I getting for my buck here? Roger, one more point before I move it on?
Yeah, just the other point was, I mean, I just wonder, same as the chap from the Trust was talking about, about similar to that, but maybe a fan's buyout. Because I just wonder, I'd certainly chip in the euros to help the club out in this situation. And I haven't got
£60 million, have you, Roger, by any chance?
Well, no, it's just in my left-hand pocket.
Good,
get
over it.
That. If there are a load of fans chipped in, how much could be raised. Somebody actually said something about that. If all the Derby fans worldwide chipped in so much, to bail the club out, could that be a possibility? Because, as I say, it doesn't do anybody any good to moan about the past or Mel Morris or whatever. What matters now is the future of Derby County. That's the only thing that matters. What can we do to help is all that matters. Yeah. Because history is history is history. You could moan about it for ages and get dead depressed, but it doesn't do us any good at the moment. And the fact of the matter is, we're not in administration. Nobody's lost a job yet. But, what can we do in the meantime is my question.
Well, your sentiment is a good one, Roger, and you won't be the only one right now thinking, what can I do to try and help? Yeah. I mean, in principle, of course, there's nothing stopping, a big crowdfunding set up and fine, but then you run into all sorts of issues of, well, who owns the club then? If everyone's putting in so much money, you're going to have about, thousands of people that want to have a say. Roger, thank you very much for getting in touch.
It should have to be a trust of some kind.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean,
yeah.
And the money involved is just frighteningly high, which suggests that's probably not going to happen. Roger, thank you very much indeed. Absolutely can't fault your optimism and ambition there. Who else have we got to speak to? Charlie, I apologize. I did say at the start of the programme, this could be your easiest hour with us because obviously it's for the fans, and the fans are very much getting in touch in their droves, so don't take it personally.
No, I'm not, Chris. I'm not. It's all about finance and the mistakes that being made. I'm just listening in.
Good man. When we can return to football at some point, hopefully we can absolutely talk about it. Who is up next? Let us go to Brendan, who is on the line. Brendan, hello.
Hello. Hi, Chris. You all right?
Hi. Yeah, good. Thanks. Go for it.
So I wanted to come away from the finance and go back to the football, really. So if we go back to before Mel took over, we got to the playoff final, had a decent team. But after that and before that, was the team really a challenging top of the league? In my opinion, if we continued with this following 6 years without Mel's money, would we get above the top half of the Championship? Would we stay 6 seasons bottom half and not really getting any excitement? At least with Mel, we've got to playoff finals. We've had a bit of excitement. We've got some big names in. Would we have got that otherwise? I'm not so sure.
Charlie?
That's interesting because there's one thing we've noticed, and it's very evident. There's been a lack of stability with the managers, and I think Mel more or less stated that he'd made some mistakes with sacking some of the managers in the past. And for me, everybody can see Frank Lampard came in, high-profile individual, but that comes with a cost. Paul Clement, for me, should he have had a bit longer? Only supporters can answer that. But I do believe when you employ a manager, you need to give them a time to actually put across their ideas, for them to stamp their authority on the club and give them the time to try and get to those goals. We've not done that. The club has not done that, and we've gambled on big profile names. And now, all of a sudden, Wayne's got the job. And I do believe Wayne's the man for the job, because at the end of the day, his job is to manage, coach his players, and he's doing a great job with his hands tied at this present time.
Brendan?
But we need stability.
Yeah. Agree with everything you say. And with Koku getting the 5-year deal, you have to question it. But coming aside from Mel's appointments, would the appointments been made attract names like Frank Lampard or Wayne Rooney if we didn't have that kind of fan of the club investing in our club?
I guess then the argument, Brendan, is, would you say that those managers have been a success? Frank Lampard, you could argue, I mean, it's not Frank Lampard's fault, clearly, but that year is, I know you can look back at previous years, but it does seem to be that the root of all evil was that year. It looks like that's the year that Derby have breached financial fair play by what I think Mel said, about £4 million. The players coming in, the money spent, we know that loan fees for Tomori, Mount and Wilson wouldn't have been cheap. 5 million or so on Wagcourt. I mean, I know this is ballpark figures. Marriott was a good couple of million. Scott Malone, Dwayne Holmes, none of them at the club anymore.
Yeah, very true, Chris. But I suppose we're not the only team that's took money at it, and it's failed.
And that's it, isn't it? The clubs that have gambled, and Villa is the prime example. Had Villa not been promoted, they'd be in exactly this situation. Dr. Tony Jarre was in all sorts of problems, and then the Greek consortium came and bailed them out. There are so many other clubs. Football is a gamble. It's just that you can be fiscally responsible with it and still try and get success, or you can gamble, you can win, you can gamble, you can lose, and it sounds like Mel has fallen into the latter there. Brendan, thank you very much for your call. Keep in touch. Thanks, ring again, 0800 145 6161. Nicholas is up next. Nicholas, hello to you.
Hello, Chris. Thank you for taking this. And
pleasure.
Can I just say it's a privilege to be on the show where Charlie Palmer's speaking, so good on you, Charlie.
Thank you very much.
A couple of points, just in a very broad way. Football is so much sponsored by gambling sites these days that, you know, in a way, what's happened to Derby is almost like this is coming back to bite us. This is, I think it's an illness in the game. You know, when you see adverts on television for gambling sites, they always warn you, to stop when things are going badly, take a break, do this, do that. We are sponsored by gambling sites, and we haven't taken that advice, and it's led us to this appalling situation. Mel Morris began his, he didn't actually begin the interview, I think it was about 10 minutes in, and he actually said the football finance model was broken. And I was waiting for him to suggest, what was the solution? And I would love to hear some real, genuine ideas, because I think unless we are prepared to be really patient and go back to a kind of community model, which would take a long, long time to prove successful, I don't know what the solution is. But we can't keep on chasing millionaires.
Well,
That's
you're
just
right.
going from the frying pan into the fire.
Well, quite, and there were certainly some elements in the interview with Mel Morris that you found yourself. And I know that obviously there's lots of contention about what he said and COVID, etc. But there were some points that you couldn't help but go, well, you're absolutely right. And the way that football is geared up now is completely unsustainable. But we were being warned about this years ago, and it's taking big clubs, Derby sadly being one of the biggest now, to really suffer. Yes, of course, you point to the recklessness of what has happened, but the point is, the Premier League is such a haven now for money. For instance, look at the teams coming down. They're pretty much going down and going up and going down and going up because they come down with the parachute payments. They spend all the money. They go back up. They can't survive because the rest of the Premier League has got richer and therefore spending more money. They come down again with parachute payments, and all the while there's teams in the Championship. As I say, Nicholas, you're right, and it's very much a conversation for another time. What do you make of the situation with Derby moving forward now? And how do you expect the next few weeks to go in terms of certainly the players and Wayne Rooney? It's such a difficult situation for them to try and block out all of the exterior noise that will be happening in and around the club and concentrate on playing football.
Yeah, I think Saturday was remarkable, absolutely remarkable. And all credits to Rooney and the players, they were fantastic. I worry because I think you can sustain that kind of resistance for just so long. But if we get hit by maybe 2 more major injuries, I think we're done for. I don't think we'll be able to sustain that resistance, to be absolutely honest. And I felt that from the beginning of the season. I think with two injuries, but maybe it's already happened with Cousin Richards, and Bailey hasn't come back yet. Yeah. So we are running on fumes, aren't we? And I just fear that. I mean, with all the will in the world, the players have been fantastic. Rooney is, to be absolutely honest, I was sceptical. I thought he was one of those big names that we were going to waste money on, but he's proved himself to be of sterner stuff, which is fantastic. But it's a gamble, because he's not a manager. Neither was Lampard. Lampard made mistakes. We shouldn't forget that Lampard made mistakes as well. So I don't know. I'm hopeful. Of course, you've got to be hopeful, haven't you? I mean, I'm 65. I've supported Derby since 1964. If you're a Rams fan, you've got to be optimistic. But it's hard to imagine that we get anybody. If we're being honest, we got through 83, 84, etc. because of Arthur Cox. Are we going to get somebody as good as that again when Wayne has moved on? Because I think Wayne will. It's a gamble.
Yeah, he is, and he has once again reaffirmed his commitment to the club on Saturday. And I know he has won so many people over with what he has said and what he's doing for the club in times of crisis. He had no links to Derby, really. No links at all. And yet he is taking responsibility. He's fronting up. He's had to front up for an awfully long time. And clearly he's getting the best out of the players. The fans adore him for what he's doing. He's not walking away. He says he's a fighter. And we'll see what happens. And if Wayne Rooney stays and has the commitment to stay and possibly rebuild the club, if it is in League One, then could be onto a good thing.
Well, if you have Curtis Davies as a player manager afterwards.
Well, the way Curtis speaks, Nicholas, I don't disagree because it's a shame he's going into media because I tell you, I agree. I think there's a manager there. Nicholas, great way to end. Thank you very much for getting in touch. Charlie enjoyed it and it's flown by. I knew it would. Great callers, great passion, great comments, a mix of opinions, which is always good. And we'll see what the coming days bring.
Thank you very much, Chris.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.